Welcome to Savvy Business, Life Unscripted, with your host, Christina Rivera, where our guests share their wisdom and valuable business tips, empowering our audience to expand their personal potential.
Hi, Cheryl Miller and Shannon Deer. Welcome to Forbidden Speech, The Raw Truth, Savvy Broadcasting's latest new series, a live stream. I'm so grateful to have you here, both of you.
We're excited to be here.
Absolutely.
You guys are doing amazing work. You came from some tough times at one point, but you've actually created a wonderful business and a new book, Business Doing Good, providing 6 principles businesses can implement to effectively hire women who have experienced challenging times as you have in the past. But you're going to share with our audience how they can actually do the same and really create a thriving business. So before we go to all of that, just share with our audience a little bit about your backstory and what brought you to where you are today.
Okay, well, I'll start. I'm Cheryl, and I ran a housing program here in Texas for 18 years. And the women who lived in that housing program ran a social enterprise. And then prior to that, I was an elementary school teacher. And then prior to that, I was a single mom with 2 children born into the welfare system. So I experienced that hardship firsthand early on. And so that's a little bit of my background.
Yeah. And what happened with you? How did it work out for you?
Well, when I found out I was pregnant, I went into labor, and I actually found out I was having twins when I went into labor, and both of them were obviously premature. And so people reached out to me and helped me and connected with me and really encouraged me and challenged me to go back to school. And so I did. They helped me get back into school. They helped watching my kids. And eventually I ended up getting a degree to where my children never had to experience living in poverty.
That's awesome. I have a friend similar to that who actually had gone back, had ended up on welfare, but then ended up on becoming a social worker, got some help and government assistance to go back to college, and now she's thriving. So just, you have bad times doesn't mean you have to stay there. Shannon, share a little bit about your story. What brought you guys together?
Sure. So I was doing research on women who had exited the sex trade and reached out to Cheryl because of all the amazing work she was doing with her organization. And so I'm a faculty member at a large university and do research and teach, and really just had a passion for trying to find ways to effectively help women overcomers. There were a lot of organizations doing a lot of different things, not all effective, but Cheryl's organization really had that special sauce that was doing something different and unique that was really transforming women's lives. And so I wanted to see what that was. And again, my research is specific to women exiting the sex trade, but our book is really a little bit broader than that, looking at women overcomers issues. So women who have overcome incarceration, addiction, poverty, and engagement in the sex trade.
Wow, that's fascinating and amazing that you ended up working together. What was the impetus that you found each other and decided, boom, we're going to do this together and explode and actually help people find a way that they don't have to stay where they are, that they can actually, grow and not stay stuck?
Yeah, there's a lot to that, but certainly, I connected with her through the research, but then a couple of summers ago, she reached back out and said, "Hey, do you want to write a book together?" And I said, "Sure. What is the book about?" But even that first phone call, I got connected to Cheryl through a mutual contact. And when I first called her, she kind of grilled me a little bit because I was asking to talk to women who had exited the sex trade, women who were truly heroes to Cheryl and to I, and also women that Cheryl, wanted to make sure we're going to be well taken care of in an interview. So she grilled me a little bit, and then she let me connect with some of the women who were exiting through her organization as well.
Yeah, it's very important. You wanted them to feel safe in the environment.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
So what is your book here to do, and how is it to impact people? Who do you hope it helps, and how? Mm-hmm.
Well, we wrote the book to businesses because we really felt like businesses are a major solution to some of the problems that we're facing right now. One of the biggest issues that the women I worked with and myself as well faced was not that we couldn't change, but finding good employment that would help us be sustained economically. And businesses have those jobs. So the book was written to businesses. But the truth of the matter is, the reality is, it's a good thing for businesses to hire women like that. But the exciting part is that the women who are going into those jobs bring a non-traditional skill set and can end up being some of their best employees. And so it's really a win-win, because the businesses get good, hardworking, loyal employees, and the women have good economic sustainability.
I love that. And let's go a little bit more into that. I'm curious about that because I had someone on a couple of years ago who was actually in the sex trade business. And he said, here I am trying to get out of it, get a normal job. And he actually got fired because they found out he had been in that trade. But there's like a stigma attached to it, and it shouldn't be. Okay, it happened, it's done. Why can't you just have a normal job? So share how what people can do. Let's say they're in that position where they had been in a sex trade industry at one point, and now they're trying to branch into a quote unquote normal job. Do they just keep everything under the wraps, or what would you suggest?
Yeah, there's a lot to that question. But certainly one of the things I found in my research was that a lot of times and my research was specific to women, it sounds like you know a man who had a similar experience, but women really, at first, when they first exited, would oftentimes self-disclose. And they would self-disclose a lot, maybe in really public situations where they would just, tell a story that maybe wasn't appropriate for the workplace. Or they would tell a boss that they had engaged in the sex trade before. And a lot of times that self-disclosure did backfire on them at first. Certainly as time goes on, women find opportunities to tell their story depending on what they're doing. In their careers. But at first it did provide consequences for the women to actually self-disclose. So there is that piece of it where keeping that a little bit close and under wraps, even though, it is part of their history, can be a strategy for maintaining jobs. And then there's a lot of other layers to that. So about 90% of the women who participated in my study who exited the sex trade also had a criminal record. And that can be a challenge too when finding a job. Although we say often, it does not mean you cannot find a job. It just can be a challenge or a barrier. And we're getting to work with a lot of companies and seeing a lot of companies that are really excited about finding ways to hire and support people who have been formerly incarcerated. So we're seeing a shift and some change in the culture and some openness to understanding that people have had a past before they come into a job and how to work with that and accept that.
That's awesome. And Cheryl, you mentioned something very interesting. You mentioned that women who had been maybe incarcerated or in the sex trade industry have unique skills to bring to the table that maybe business owners hadn't thought about, but that could really help businesses. Share your expertise or idea on that.
Well, to survive living in poverty, you have to be creative. More often than not, the women, especially single moms, are really hard workers. There's a lot of resilience involved in surviving those negative lifestyles. If you've been in a drug addiction, there's a lot of skills in that translate. You have to be tough. You have to be risk averse. So those are the types of things that work well in the workplace. And it's what we found. It was just a matter of helping the women understand all the things that you've been using to survive are exactly the things that employers want, and that's what's going to make you a good employee. So you just have to learn the details of the job, and you're going to be one of the most valuable employees.
That's awesome. I love that you mentioned that because it's so true. I remember many years ago, I had worked several years as an entrepreneur, and one gal in this agency, headhunters had said, hey, we're looking for someone who can think outside the box. And that's just what you're talking about. Someone who hadn't been, the status quo going along, chug, 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 really not much challenges in your life. It's going to be a little harder to think outside the box and find those creative ways to get things done.
Right.
Yeah. That's awesome. So can you share maybe one of the stories, one of the very impactful stories of your book with our audience?
Sure. I think one of my favorite stories is a woman. She was actually the second one to take out a loan. We were doing micro lending, and so she wanted to start a business, and so she came to us. She was in our housing program, and she came to us, approached us, and asked if she could apply for a loan to start a juice business. And so she went through the process. She put together a business plan. We had this team that was like a quasi Shark Tank, and so she pitched it to the Shark Tank, and they approved her loan for $5,000 to start her business. And she was only 8 months sober at the time that she was given that loan. And so she started her business, and she, started selling her juice in local food markets. And then she was asked to expand to a food truck, and she was asked, they said, well, do you have enough money to expand into a food truck? And she said, sure, I do, but she didn't. And so she came back to us and asked if we would do a capital investment, invest $10,000 into her business and for 5% of the company. And so we did that. And then from there, and she got three other investors. And so she opened her food truck. And then a few years later, she opened up a restaurant. A few years later, she opened up a sober living house. That sober living house then opened up another social enterprise.
Wow.
Almost all the employees that worked with her were in recovery as she was. She paid her loan back in full. She was never late, and she sold her business 4 years, just this past year. All that happened in 4 years. Yeah. And when she sold her business, it was doing $500,000 in the sales a year.
Woo! Awesome.
Yeah.
That is such a great story. And I love this because people don't realize that just because you're down in the gutter doesn't mean you have to stay there. There are so many ways. And you said something really important about what she did, which I totally love, which is someone said, hey, could you do this? She's like, yeah, sure. Even though she wasn't ready yet. And I recall many years ago having to do the same thing. And it wasn't fake it till you make it. It was like, I just had to make it happen. And sometimes you're not ready, but that asking is like, okay, I'm going to just do it.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly one of those skills that we talked about that women overcomers have in spades, is being able to figure it out, to just do it. And you're right, it's not fake it until you make it. It's that confidence in yourself to know that I can figure it out. And one of the things that Cheryl did so well was in thinking about those skills that women had gained in previous parts of their life, in addiction, in the sex trade, in poverty, thinking about those skills. Cheryl did a great thing, which is one of the principles in our books, called translation factor, where she would tell the women, hey, those skills you had are really important in business. And she would say, you figured it out there, you can figure it out here too. And sometimes they just needed that extra level of encouragement from a trusted person to say, you have what it takes. So they do have what it takes, but they just needed to hear that. And that was a really important aspect of being able to then, like you said, figure it out.
Yeah. I totally love that because it doesn't leave you out. Many years ago, it was my very first job ever. I had worked on a computer. In fact, we had a computer class in school, but I didn't have the experience they were asking for a computer that in this particular job. So what I did, I just asked for the computer manual, went home, memorized it. I said, yeah, I have experience. When I came back, I became the go-to person for their software.
Oh, wow.
So, it goes to show that it doesn't matter what experience you have. If you know you can do it, just say yes and make it happen.
Absolutely.
Just like that gal you talked about. Well, this has been awesome. I want everyone to go get a copy, whether you're a business owner or not. For people who feel like they can't just change things in life and make it better, the people that you illustrate in your book and show them that they can do that, they can think outside the box, create an awesome life. Where can they get a copy of Business Doing Good?
Anywhere books are sold. So Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere books are sold online, you can find a copy of Business Doing Good, Engaging Women and Elevating Communities.
Awesome. And I see you have a website, businessdoinggood.org.
We do. And you can find out about training opportunities, consulting. We partner with companies to help them actually implement the principles. So all of that is on our website.
Awesome. Cheryl and Shannon, I just have to thank you again for this wonderful conversation and for really going out there to make opportunities for people that might feel that they're out, but they don't have to be out. This is just the beginning. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate you coming to Forbidden Speech, The Raw Truth, Savvy's new series. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Like, subscribe, and share this episode. To listen to more savvy episodes and savvy biz tips, go to www.lifeunscriptedradio.com. To find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or how to become a guest, email Christina at lifeunscriptedradio.com.